she apparently finds everything in perfect order. Like, lesson plans are ready to go. Records are super organized, which, again, doesn't mean that Ellen didn't feel overwhelmed or anxious at work, but she seemed to be on top of everything.
Okay, but Ellen might not have been planning to do anything when she gassed up her car. I mean, choosing to take your own life can be a really impulsive decision. And with the organized schoolwork, just because she completed it doesn't mean that it didn't stress her out to do it. I mean, I get like that all the time. Or maybe it was just one more sign that she was getting her affairs in order, making sure, nothing was left undone for her kids. It could really go either way.
Yes, either way is absolutely possible. But as time passes, Ellen's parents uncover more details that they think call the suicide ruling into serious question. There are just too many loose ends, too many things that don't make sense to them. So the Greenbergs decide that if authorities won't help them get to the bottom of things, they're going to start their own investigation.
I didn't have it easy in the beginning. I had a very rough time. But once I made up my mind that I want my daughter's name cleared and I'd really like to know what happened.
Eventually, Ellen's parents get copies of...
Have it easy in the beginning. I had a very rough time. But once I made up my mind that I want my daughter's name cleared and I'd really like to know what happened.
Eventually, Ellen's parents get copies of the autopsy, crime scene photos, and the Emmys investigation report, which they send to a well-known forensic pathologist, this guy named Cyril Wecht, for an independent review. Dr. Wecht shares his findings with the family in January 2012, a year after Ellen's death. In his report, he notes that the multiple stab wounds to the back of Ellen's neck and the lower head were not likely self-inflicted, especially the ones that were in different directions. He also says that victims of suicide rarely stab themselves through their clothes. Overall, his opinion is that Ellen's manner of death is, quote, strongly suspicious of homicide, end quote. So finally, a professional is validating what Josh and Sandy have been thinking all along. And the Greenbergs are hoping that Dr. Wecht's report can help get Ellen's case reopened. So they hire a lawyer to help them move things along. And that spring, they get a meeting with the Philadelphia DA's office, but unfortunately nothing comes of it. Eventually, that lawyer stops representing them, and another lawyer joins their cause, Walter Cohen, a former attorney general in Pennsylvania who takes the case pro bono. Their PI, Tom Brennan, who has 25 plus years of law enforcement expertise under his belt, also offers his service for free. And it's Tom who raises the theory that Ellen might have been killed in what's known as a blitz attack. That's when a victim is caught by surprise and doesn't have time to defend themselves, which Tom says would explain Ellen's lack of defensive wounds. So with their help, Josh and Sandy file a public records request for the police case file. But even though the case is considered closed, Tom says police won't release the records. Instead, the Greenbergs are allowed to go look at some records in the department, but they can't make copies, they can't take photos, and truthfully, they don't even really know what they're looking for. Over the next few years, they hit roadblock after roadblock. And then in 2015, a Philadelphia homicide prosecutor named Guy DeAndrea agrees to take a look at Ellen's case file after an acquaintance brings it to his attention. Guy is in a unique position because he seems to be the only person who's seen everything in the case file and is willing to speak publicly about it. Even though the case was never officially assigned to him, he actually went through the evidence thoroughly. And here's Guy from a Facebook Live Q&A that he did about Ellen's case.
I can tell you from my experience as a homicide prosecutor, it wasn't treated with the level that an investigation would be treated if viewed by the authorities as a homicide on scene. Why it wasn't, with upwards of 20 stab wounds and a laceration to the head, I don't have a good answer for that.
We have a link to that Facebook Live video on our blog post for this episode, but I want to go over a few points that he mentioned. So Guy saw the surveillance footage from Venice Lofts, which show the lobby and it shows the corridor leading to the gym. The only people who came and went around the time of Ellen's death were other residents of the building, no strangers. Video footage and Sam's key fob records verify that Sam got to the fitness center around 5 p.m. that day and was there for about 30 minutes before going back up to the apartment. There's only surveillance in the common area, so no one can see what happens in the 6th floor hallway. But there is footage showing Sam when he goes back down to speak with Phil, the security guard at the front desk.
And that's the guy that Sam said he was with when he forced the door open and found Ellen, right?
Yes, but there's one problem, like a big problem. Sam's story is not true.
What?
According to Phil, when Sam went downstairs, he did ask Phil for help getting into his apartment, but Phil said he repeatedly told Sam he couldn't help him. Like it's against company policy, like not gonna happen. Sam even told Phil that he might force or kick the door in, and Phil warned him that, okay, you can do that, but you're gonna be responsible for any damage that you cause. And then Sam went back upstairs by himself.
I don't get it. What's the point of saying that Phil was with you if he wasn't?
I don't know. In a declaration he gave, Phil says that he never accompanied Sam upstairs, not for one single minute. The only time Phil went upstairs was later with first responders, but not with Sam. So no one was with Sam when he found Ellen.
And did Phil ever talk to the police about this?
He did, and here's what he told them according to Guy.
He conclusively stated in his signed statement to Philadelphia homicide detectives that he did not go upstairs. In other words, he was not there when the door when entry was made into the apartment.
So why would police corroborate Sam's story of a witness when they spoke to Dr. Osborne during that, come to Jesus meeting back in 2011?
I have no clue. I mean, the evidence is irrefutable. Phil's statement is backed up by surveillance video, which shows Sam getting on the elevator to go back upstairs by himself.
And so if that's what you used to help convince Emmy that it was a suicide, what the f***?
I actually want to stay on the topic of the door lock for a minute. So remember the interior lock is a huge reason that police were so quick to call it a suicide. And Guy basically says he was told the same thing. So he was picturing this heavy duty deadbolt lock, like the type he remembers from his own childhood home. But then when he sees photos of the lock, it's not exactly what he was expecting.
I did a quick Google search, or really a YouTube search, on is it possible to open or lock or unlock one of those sliding hotel, that's really what it is, a hotel locking mechanism. Within seconds, there's dozens of videos on how to do that, using a credit card, a hanger, a piece of gum, sticking the lock sort of halfway open, halfway closed, and slamming the door shut as hard as possible. In other words, there's so many different ways to lock that door from the outside.
Plus, Guy notices something else. The lock wasn't that badly damaged, considering Sam said that he forced his way in. There's some damage, don't get me wrong, but it was still intact and attached to the door.
Oh, so almost like it was pushed in and loosened enough that you could maybe unlock it without breaking it or doing anything else?
I have no idea. I don't even know if Guy knows what it means. It's just not what he, I think, was expecting to see.
Right.
Basically, Guy he sees significant flaws in the way that this case was handled and how the crime scene was interpreted. And Guy isn't the only one who's seeing this stuff. This episode was made possible by SimpliSafe. If you've ever wanted to make your home